On tonight's No Things Considered, repeal and replace it already. Seriously, get this over with. There's a storm brewing named Hillary, and dog news. No, seriously. And now here's your host, Tim Young.
Welcome to No Things Considered. My name is Tim Young, and boy, oh boy, was it a hell of a slow news day. There is nothing to talk about other than healthcare, so that's what we're going to start with tonight. The Republican plan to repeal, replace, just repeal it now. We're not replacing it anymore. We're going to. I don't know. What do you guys know about it? Why don't you tell us? Tell us in the comments right now what you think is going on, because I think it's a replace. But then John McCain's in the hospital. There's a lot of things that are going on right now. It is confusing as hell. But here's what I do know: the current plan seems to be a little bit like our friends the Underpants Gnomes on South Park, where it's repeal, profit. And I'd just like to see a little bit more. I think a lot of people want to see a lot more from this, and we want to see this happen. It's time to get rid of Obamacare. We can all agree that it's all time to get rid of Obamacare. And I guess Republicans are doing something right because, well, crying Chuck Schumer is out to cry about it today.
Evidently, President Trump is proposing a different path. He wants to throw up his hands rather than roll up his sleeves to work with us and solve the problem. But let's be very clear about what the president is proposing and where his path would lead. The president would not be, quote, letting Obamacare collapse.
No, he wouldn't be letting Obamacare collapse anymore because it's basically already collapsed. As a lot of you know at home, your premiums have skyrocketed if you're on Obamacare. I know one of my friends tripled, another one of my friends quadrupled in their Obamacare monthly premiums. And by the way, what the hell is with this whole concept of working together? Do you remember over the last 8 years before Donald Trump took office, when the White House absolutely refused to work with the Republicans in Congress and just waited till he had the votes or just signed executive orders to get things done? The concept of working together is like a new one to Democrats. And suddenly they want to work together when they lost and they keep losing. So they're going to go out and cry and cry and cry. But let's be very honest here. So Obamacare has failed. It's totally failed. A lot of the healthcare organizations and providers are pulling out from different states, and people are actually losing coverage and getting hurt right now as is because they can't afford it. I personally don't have health care. Watch me roll down steps later today. You'll never see me again. I won't be able to afford the surgery. But hey, it's one of those things. There's a lot of us out there that don't have it because it's ridiculously priced. It's cheaper to just take the penalty at the end of the year. Let's hear some more from Crying Chuck.
He is actively trying to undermine the healthcare system in this country, using millions of Americans as political pawns in a cynical game. By continuing to deny the insurance markets their certainty that they need to function, the president is playing a dangerous game with the health care of this country.
He's playing a cynical game. He's playing a cynical game? That's my game. I play the cynical game. I don't even know this. What's a cynical game? He meant sinister game. Is that what he meant? He meant sinister game? Man, I have no idea. With millions of people. Here's what's going to happen. People have to get off of Obamacare to get on whatever the new plan's going to be. So of course they're going to lose their health care for a little bit, maybe a very short period of time. So when you hear huge numbers, it's just the way the process is going to go. It's not like anything spectacular or awful or whatever. It's a couple of days, whatever, maybe a couple of months, whatever. This is just insane. The crying is ridiculous from their side. Using people as pawns. Donald Trump isn't using people as pawns. The Republicans are trying to replace a failed system that people can't afford anymore. I don't know what to tell you about that one. Just poor Chuck. He didn't wink any tears though today, and that's really the biggest letdown of the whole situation. So you expect him to just be a little bit more dramatic, a little bit more whiny than that. Gotta work on that, Chuck. Maybe bring some graphics with you next time too. Who knows? In other news, California. There we go. California is suing oil companies for the rising sea levels. How are you going to prove that one, kiddo? This is a very interesting situation because they're going to go and sue people for selling gas or fuel that you're then saying caused icebergs to melt. Listen, at this point, you might as well just sue God. Just sue God for everything, because I don't know that they believe in God, but if they do, that's where you got to go with this, because there's such a, listen, I have a law degree that I don't use. There's such like, okay, so if my producer comes over and punches me, that's a direct action. I can sue her. She wants to. I can tell by her face. She wants to punch me. That's a direct action. I can sue her for that. if someone sells gasoline and then people use gasoline, there's a lot of chemicals and a lot of process that goes in between that point of things and selling oil that then gets refined into gasoline. You can point fingers at everything. For it then to eventually conclude to the point that the sea levels are rising and there's no, it's interesting scientific evidence to see where that goes. Good luck with that case. That was, if you listen to that, it's as convoluted as it sounds. It's just not going to happen. And right now, actually, while you guys are debating and telling me how funny I am, great, in the comments section, put down who you think is going to win that one. You think the oil companies are going to win that? Or do you think the the state of California is going to win that race? Not that race, that trial. I have a feeling the oil companies are going to come out on top after they get past California courts. It'll go to California courts, then it'll get thrown out at a federal level. The end. But write down what you think there. In animal news, seriously, that's how bad the news cycle is today. We're in animal news right now. A dog saved a deer. We're covering animal news. Throw to the clip.
Storm is saving this baby deer right this minute. Good boy, Storm. Good boy, Storm, okay? Good job, boy. Good job, boy. She's okay. She's okay, buddy.
Have you ever saved any deer from the water? You too good to talk to me right now? Is that what's going on? You know, we're gonna fill some time with you. This is the best interview I've ever had on this show. Thanks, Brian. This is Whiskey the dog, everybody. Look at Whiskey the dog. We are pandering to the female audience right now. Click a heart button if you like Whiskey the dog. Here, look at Whiskey. In other news, weather. Seriously, weather. No, this is good. Hang in there. Tropical storm Hillary is forming off of the Pacific coast of California. Now, if you ask me about it, I have a feeling that the following states won't be affected. Wisconsin, Ohio, and Michigan. They have nothing to worry about. And in the end, the only people who are going to be really sad about it are people who lived in New York and LA. That was good. There's a lot of polling going on. A lot of interesting polls happening this week. Turns out, by the way, Hillary Clinton less popular than Donald Trump. They keep saying Donald Trump is at record low numbers in his approval rating, which maybe not. But more importantly, Hillary, even worse. People really don't like her. So, guys, if anybody says, popular vote this, whatever, Hillary still would lose if the election were held today. In other news, a majority of smokers feeling discriminated against in the country. 56% of smokers feel discriminated against in this country. That's what we got. 56% of smokers feel discriminated. 17% of fat people. So really, if I picked up a cigarette, the odds are I'd feel really bad about myself, like somebody hated me. More than you guys in the comments. Fantastic. The Washington Post reporting, put this full screen, please. What do you think the Democratic Party currently stands for? What do you think the Democratic Party currently stands for? Turns out 52% of people think it just stands for whatever isn't Trump. That's a hell of a platform to work off of. Maybe work on that a little bit, guys? Maybe a little? No? Yes? No? Huh? And also, in media news, you might remember yesterday, Joe Scarborough called Sean Hannity lots of mean names, called him state-run TV. And well, Sean Hannity and Joe Scarborough, who I think are actually the same person, by the way. I've never seen him in the same place. I think just Hannity puts on glasses and hosts Morning Joe, and then he takes them off, and he hosts his nightly show. That's the trick. He's like Steve Harvey. He's on the radio and TV all the time. That's it. He thinks he's tricking people. He's not. Anyway, Sean Hannity responding just the way the President of the United States of America would respond. Throw these full screen. Fantastic read. Liberal Joe is boring, low-rated establishment TV. Joe calls the POTUS a schmuck, goon, and thug just to please DC, NYC elites, and Mika. Liberal Joe is desperate for attention now, lashing out at POTUS, me, singing bad songs on Colbert. I crushed him on radio and TV, and then this one. Sad truth about Liberal Joe is this. He had to become an MSNBC liberal to keep his job. Greta refused to change. Joe sold his soul. Sheep TV. Awesome. I just think it's great. I honestly think I'd like to see you both in the same place at the same time. It could be the battle of the poofy hair from White Guys. They have the same hair. One pull cue, snap it, hand it to him. Only one of you gets out of this. There's only room for one. I got all day. I'll talk all day. No. Here's something that's interesting, all of you women's libbers out there. In Saudi Arabia right now, well, let's just put it this way. Last week, this video was taken in Saudi Arabia. So that video doesn't seem like anything. It's just a girl walking around in a skirt, and it looked like a little crop top. Did she have a belt on? Was it a crop top? I think. She was walking around in a little skirt just in the streets of Saudi Arabia. Turns out, that's completely illegal over there. And so right now, they are looking for her. Police are looking for her because she broke dress code. And people want her arrested. There's a public outcry for people wanting her arrested. Because in Saudi Arabia, women actually have no rights. So I'd love to see some of these ladies get out there and argue. Remember, we're supposed to have no rights in America. Women are supposed to have no rights in America. And it's so terrible out here. But literally, for wearing this skirt, you can be arrested in Saudi Arabia. But they're not going to go over there and protest. You don't think they're going to go over there and protest? No women's rights march in Saudi Arabia anytime soon. That would be just normal. Sometimes things happen in the media that I actually agree with. And this is a pretty good one. A former New York Observer editor, Ken Kirsten, went on Brian Stelter's show. What's it called? Reliable Sources. It's very reliable. He's a very reliable guy, that Brian Stelter. He brought him on his show to talk about the bias in the media, and he makes some very interesting points. Here's Ken Kirsten talking about how the media has taken up the ranks that the Democratic Party used to, as they're the only people fighting against Donald Trump. Very interesting interview. We're going to break it down for you.
So the idea here is that the media has become the opposition to Trump. I mean, just listening to the intro to this show.
So that's right. The media has become the opposition to Trump instead of just the Democratic Party. And he's going to break it down a little bit more for you here, because as we showed that poll earlier today, literally people have realized the Democratic Party has zero platform whatsoever, other than we don't like Trump. Not a good look. Here's Kirsten breaking it down a little bit more.
No, just listening to the intro to the show, listening to Fareed's show before it, it's no longer that the Republican point of view holds forth and the Democrats hold them accountable and the media covers it. It's that the president and the White House put forth their point of view, the media argues with them, and the Democrats have become like totally irrelevant to that discussion. It's a stunning thing to watch.
And he's exactly right, and that's what we've kind of seen on this show and what you guys have seen at home. Literally, the Democrats aren't a part of the discussion anymore. Donald Trump will put something out there, and I'm sure you've seen this many times, and then everyone, which he actually calls out, Ken Kirsten, even on CNN, the commentators will come out, they'll present a little bit of news, and then they will comment for the remainder of the 55 minutes of a show how terrible Donald Trump and his administration are. It's the most insane bias I think we've ever seen in history. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm unbiased. I completely am biased. But I'm a comic. I'm not a journalist. I'm not pretending to be anything other than funny. So I'm pretending to be funny. That was a joke. So he's making very interesting points. Stelter doesn't know how to respond to this, and it continues.
Unfold during this presidency, and I don't know if it's the
irrelevancy of the Democratic Party.
Totally, and the way the press has assigned itself the chore of undoing the results of this election, which they simply don't accept.
Ken is speaking too much truth on CNN right here, and that's what's kind of an interesting situation for, I'm sure, Brian Stelter. They're not used to having somebody come on and calmly say, kind of a monotone way, say that this is just how it is. The media was upset with the results of the election, which they have been. And so what they're doing is systematically trying to attack Trump, where usually it's a political party who does it. Very interesting stuff. He continues on to talk about the reward system that the media has. We'll see that in a second.
But I think that the way, during these breaks, when I watch you go on Twitter, the way journalists reward each other for stabbing and needling, there's a new system of reward that is out there for journalists that has very little to do with policy and very little to do with advancing this country.
And he continues that it's no longer a two-party system, it's a one-party system and a media. Nothing in between. Because Nancy Pelosi has led them down the road to emptiness and despair.
And I think the shame of it is we no longer have even a two-party system, which many think is too few. We have a one-party system, and the media is the other part.
So that's what happens. See, now it's not about journalists being journalists. It's about journalists being the center of the story and being more popular and trying to outdo each other and try to get credit for things. It's all about being the center of everything. You see journalists around town in DC going to fancy clubs and pretending that they're someone that should be celebrated and celebrity themselves, rather than where it used to be years ago, where journalists would want to break a story and then go heavily drink and smoke a cigarette. Like basically the staff of the show. So that's what we do. We tell you the story, we break it down, we go drink. That's the way it used to be. But now everyone wants to be front and center and more popular than someone else. And it's something that you may not see in the middle of the country, but it's something that is very prevalent in New York, LA, and major media hubs. It's not enough to be a journalist anymore. Now journalists want to be celebrities themselves. And I guess that kind of happened with millennials and over the past couple of decades with social media. They like the attention they get on social media. They compare their social media numbers. Some places I hear even make charts and compare the social media numbers to see who's doing the best in their office. I have no idea where. Next clip.
When I look at the tone and the way these attacks are launched, and I cited a couple examples for you, or the way that whenever there's a need for the appearance of balance, NPR will hire some conservative who hates the president, or the New York Times will go get Bret Stephens, whose main contribution is that he hates the president. Whenever there's the need for the appearance of fairness, there's no real effort to where are the pro-Trump journalists in the mainstream media? They don't exist because the entire mainstream media is against Trump.
That's right. So that's the trick. That's the trick that these more left-leaning media organizations do. Washington Post has Jennifer Rubin, who goes on things and says that she's a Republican, but she hates Trump. I'm surprised Evan McMullin hasn't landed a job yet somewhere, because I believe he still claims to be a Republican. You also had Louise Mensch, who claims to be a conservative, and she goes out, and her main purpose is to go on shows that try to look like they're non-biased by bringing on a conservative or a Republican voice when they're completely biased, because the entire panel is against the president. See, it's not a Republican or a conservative thing. It is a media versus Trump thing. It's not even a Democrat thing, because the Democrats are out of the picture. It's a very interesting chart that's been pointed to here by Ken Kirsten. So you now have literally no Democratic Party, media claiming to be both conservative and liberal, but they're all just anti-Trump. It's a weird dynamic, and this is a little bit more heady than most of our shows. We're getting a little smart here. And we're going to get back into what he was talking about, the reward system, which is retweets, likes, and, well, everything you should be doing right now for this show. Share it.
And that, I think, is not just bad for American policy. I think it's bad for journalism.
I think a lot of journalists are against lying, against deceit. That's where we are right now.
I'm against lying and deceit. I think that the function of the journalist to hold the administration accountable is a critical function enshrined in our Bill of Rights. But when you have a system where the most outrageous attack is what's rewarded with likes on Facebook and followings on Twitter, you're setting yourself up. No, it's not just opinion columns. It's reporters, and they audition for each other, and they audition for popularity.
So that's it. He perfectly sums up where journalism is right now. Ken Kirsten, former editor of the New York Observer, literally lays it out for you. Guys, this is like, am I allowed to say this? Sure. It's a circle jerk for journalists to talk about how negative things are about Trump and then get as many likes and retweets as possible on it on Facebook, which is kind of crazy if you think about it. Journalism itself has shifted. It's now become more political and more proactive than ever before. It's activist journalists. They're not just telling a story anymore. They're telling a story the way that they want to tell a story, and they're spinning the stories for you. That's my job. I'm the stupid comic that's not funny half the time. It's my job to do that, not them. They're supposed to be telling a story and laying out facts. But in major media hubs, these people are literally rewarding themselves, high-fiving each other, buying each other drinks, and making sure that they're on the scene to be seen. It's a bad place where journalism is. And that's coming from not just me, the comic, but me, the guy who used to be the head of the young members of the National Press Club, and I represented all media members under 35 at one point, believe it or not. Crazy, right? Don't give me that look. You never knew that, did you? No. Gross. Journalism is in bad shape right now, and it's not because of treatment from the president and the government. It's because of treatment by journalists trying to make themselves stars when they should just be doing their job and working hard. But I guess it's more fun for them to be anti-Trump and show their actual colors and who they voted for in the last election, huh? Well, and that's a good place to leave it right there. And let me be a hypocrite right now, because I said that journalists shouldn't be in it for the likes and for the recognition. And right now I'm going to ask you, click like, click the heart button, click that smile button on this very video, because I am a dirty hypocrite. But I'm also not a journalist. I'm just a comic book. Well, whatever. Guys, we're here every night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Daily Caller Facebook page. If you want to see some cool breaking stories and other great videos, just scroll right down on the Facebook page. Also go to dailycaller.com, dailycallernewsfoundation.org. And, let's go drink it standing green.